The Silent Visitor. It was a cold night when Claire first heard the knock. Soft, almost like a whisper against the old wood of her front door. She glanced up from her book, the fire crackling in the hearth, casting long shadows along the walls of her isolated cabin. The wind outside howled, but this knock was different. She waited, her heart beginning to race, but there was no second knock. Dismissing it as a trick of the wind, she tried to lose herself in the pages again. Yet unease lingered, her eyes darting to the window, half expecting to see someone. Then it came again. Knock, 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 louder, more deliberate. Claire's breath hitched. Who could possibly be out here? Her cabin was miles from town, hidden deep in the forest where no one ventured at night. Slowly, she rose, the wooden floor creaking beneath her feet. She hesitated at the door, her hand hovering over the knob. "Who's there?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Cold air rushed in, but no one stood on the porch. Only the dense darkness of the woods stared back at her. She leaned out, eyes straining against the shadows. Still, nothing. She laughed nervously, shutting the door and bolting it. Back in the living room, she stirred the fire. The clock ticked loudly, each second echoing in the silence. She tried to convince herself it was just the wind. Knock, 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 this time from the window. Claire's blood ran cold. Slowly, she turned her head. At first, she saw only her reflection against the glass. But then, behind her reflection, two dark eyes staring from outside the window. Her breath caught in her throat. She jumped to her feet, knocking over her chair. The firelight flickered violently, casting wild shadows. But when she spun back to the window, the figure was gone. Her heart pounded. She moved closer to the window, daring herself to look out again. Nothing. Just darkness. She stumbled back, chest tight with fear. Then the knocking came again, from the back door. Knock, knock, knock. Shaking, Claire moved through the cabin. The knocking grew louder, more insistent. She reached the back door and flung it open, desperate to end the madness. But there was no one there. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the cabin into darkness. Panic surged as she fumbled for the flashlight. Finally, her fingers wrapped around it, and she clicked it on. The beam trembled in her hand. The cabin felt wrong now, thick with a presence she couldn't explain. The air was heavy, oppressive, and too still. Her eyes darted to the hallway. The shadows at the far end seemed to be moving. She heard it again. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from her bedroom. Her stomach twisted with dread. She hadn't locked the bedroom door. The beam of the flashlight shook as she pointed it down the hall. A low sound reached her ears, like breathing, but not her own. Gathering every ounce of courage, Claire stepped forward. The footsteps stopped. Silence. She reached the bedroom door and swung it open. The room was empty. Her body sagged with relief, but it was short-lived. Behind her, she heard the door creak closed. She turned, and there, just inside the doorway, stood a figure cloaked in shadow. Tall, gaunt, its eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. The flashlight flickered in her hand, casting fleeting glimpses of its face. Pale, skeletal, with a smile too wide, too unnatural. Claire froze. The figure didn't move, but the air around it pulsed with darkness. It opened its mouth, a deep, guttural whisper escaping its lips, though no sound emerged. Suddenly, the figure lunged. In an instant, the flashlight went out. Claire screamed, stumbling backward, crashing into the bedside table. She scrambled to her feet, frantically searching for the door, but it was too late. Cold, bony hands clamped around her wrists, yanking her into the darkness. She fought, thrashing and kicking, but the grip was unyielding. Her screams echoed into nothingness as the cabin fell silent once more. The next morning, a park ranger found Claire's cabin. The door was wide open, the fire long extinguished. Inside, everything was untouched except for her book lying open on the floor. One sentence was underlined in thick black ink: "You can never leave." Claire was never seen again.